But is there something that causes an adversarial co-parent relationship, or something needs to take place so we can move forward and accept the fact? Because from my standpoint, it's we're not going to be together, fine, all right, but we still have this child to raise together. So what's going on between me and you, that doesn't really matter anymore in my eyes. It should not
That
matter.
would be a utopian world, right? Like, like you say, oh yeah, we went through what we went through, but we raising this. That is sure. That would be the outcome. That would be best, right? But you also have to think about like the emotional intelligence of the other person, or just emotionally what they're going through or what you're going through. And some people can't get past that of what happened, right? So that creates the adversarial co-parenting because.
Man, we gotta come together, but we still fight. I see the future for the kids, but it ain't looking right. So we gotta rise up, stand up for one another. I'm talking to the black mothers and brothers. The world's going crazy cause these kids ain't got no guidance. Mama tell them no, but that man just keeps on trying. The fathers choose to lead to the kids, he always lying. Now mama all alone, raising kids on her own, and the system is against us, so we gotta be strong.
I'd like to thank all of you for coming back for episode 2 of the Held Accountable podcast, in which my focus in starting is reform is needed in the family court system and just in our families in general. And before we can start holding the court system accountable for its role that's being played in destroying the family unit, I feel that we need to hold ourselves accountable and for what role we've played. The back and forth and I guess poor co-parenting skills that a lot of us have, including myself, all it's doing is hurting our children. And so in order to give us some tips, you can hold yourself accountable, but sometimes you don't realize what you're doing is detrimental to the development and to the emotional, I guess, what would you call it, well-being of the children.
Yes.
And so in order to do that, I'm not a professional in that, but that's why I brought in Miss Courtney Ledette, or Lede, however, depending on where
Louisiana.
you're from. Yeah. Okay. So I guess start, what's your background and what do you focus on? Or?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I do think that it is important to encompass a lot of different areas when you're thinking about and talking about co-parenting, especially when it comes to mental, emotional, and behavioral health. So I am a licensed professional counselor here in Houston. I service Houston and surrounding areas, as well as if you're in Texas, teletherapy. I've been in private practice now for about 5 years. I've been a therapist for 7 years. And so I work with individuals, couples, families, to kind of work on their emotional, mental, and behavioral health.
Okay. I guess the name of your business, so we can get that out.
Absolutely. So I am in private practice, the Green Couch Counseling Services here in Houston.
Okay. All right. And I know we had talked about it before a little bit, but you were offering some type of, if they use the promo code Accountable 365, can they get a little discount or?
Absolutely. So in the therapist community, we do offer sliding scale.
Okay.
So that is a self-pay kind of basic rate. So it can be used for the term of therapy services, but yeah, sliding scale.
Okay. And I'll talk more about that at a later date. But let's get into why we're really here. We talk about co-parenting. That is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to do, especially after the breakup, of a relationship, whether it's divorce or whether you were never married at all. My question for you is, what do you think is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for new co-parent? Let's say this is year one, just either had a baby with someone that wasn't married to, or have a divorce. Like, what's that biggest stumbling block for new co-parents, in your opinion?
I think that there can be several stumbling blocks, really, but like essentially it's the transition, right? So it's the transition of either we were together for years or we were together for a little while, and now I have to raise this child singly, like as a single parent, and kind of work with somebody else where the relationship ended, that can be difficult because usually when you end a relationship, I don't have to see you anymore.
Yeah.
But now I have to see you all
For
the time or
yeah,
talk
for
to
the rest of
you
our
for the rest
lives.
of our lives. I have
Yeah.
to see you and talk to you. And depending on why the relationship ended, that could be difficult for people, as well as if you were never together, so you don't have any ties to this person outside of the baby, then now I have to co-parent with somebody I didn't plan on keeping in my life
Yeah.
at all. So I think it's just a transition of how do we make this work when we were in love and now we might still be in love but we're not together, or we're not in love anymore, or I didn't plan to have a baby with this person at all.
Yeah.
And now I have to keep this person in my life. So I think that it's just the transition of like, what does life look like without this person in my life?
Okay. Do you think it's harder for, I guess I would ask, do you think it's harder for those like myself who was never married to the mother of my children versus those who are going, are the result of a divorce? Do you think it's harder to co-parent in either one of those situations, or?
I think that like marriage and divorce causes a little bit of a difference only because there's legal aspects. And so if we're fighting on who gets the
Unfortunately,
house.
there's legal aspects.
Well, yeah. In terms of like, we have community property.
Yeah.
So now I have to agree on who gets the house, who gets the savings account, or who, if there were investments, things of that nature. There's that legal tie that now we have to split everything that we built together. And sometimes that can happen in common law relationships, sure, but sometimes so now we're fighting on the house and the properties and, all of those things instead of just what is it with the children.
I guess I'm more, instead of these actual split, after the split, like let's say everything's said and done, I mean, raising the child. So to me, it seems like it's harder for folks who were never married, because if you were married, you at least were doing it together, like raising this child together for a period of time. Whereas if we were never married, we're just going straight to the, and we don't have that experience of, hey, this is how we did things. This is that understanding. It's trying to get two understandings or two ways of, I guess, parenting.
But was there a relationship ever? Because I think that it would be different if there was never a relationship and now we're trying to figure each other out because we don't know each other at all like that, versus if there was a relationship. If there was a relationship in general, whether you're married or not, I think that it kind of would be the same in terms of after, because if there was a relationship, that means you knew each other, you loved each other, you were doing some things together.
Let's say love in all cases, but no, I guess we never raised a child together. Like we may have known each other as individual adults, but I think it's different when it's, okay, well, what do you feel on raising a child, like discipline or?
So like you're speaking like in terms of like marriage. Not all people who get married talk about how they want to raise their children.
Correct.
Right. So like marriage, some people do before, especially if you go to premarital counseling or if you go to the church and things of that nature, they'll talk to you about like, oh, well, what are your thoughts on discipline and things of that nature? A lot of people don't discuss that either way, but sometimes you don't get the ability to have that discussion, and then you just have the child and now you're trying to figure it out. So I think that it could be difficult either way, just depending on how the relationship was set up, whether you're married or not. I think that it could be difficult.
So that being said, is there something that needs to take place before let's say, because one of the biggest things is adversarial co-parenting relationships, or the technical term, but is there something that causes an adversarial co-parent relationship, or something needs to take place so we can move forward and accept the fact? Because from my standpoint, we're not going to be together, fine. All right, but we still have this child to raise together. So what's going on between me and you, that doesn't really matter anymore in my eyes. It should not matter.
That would be a utopian world, right? Like, like you say, oh yeah, we went through what we went through, but we raising this. That is sure. That would be the outcome that would be best right? But you also have to think about like the emotional intelligence of the other person, or just emotionally what they're going through or what you're going through. And some people can't get past that of what happened.
Okay.
Right? So that creates the adversarial co-parenting, because you used to yell at me, or you cheated on me, or we used to get into it and now we're not together, and I can't get past that and try to see you at the baby swim meet. Like for some people that's difficult for them to get past.
Okay. So how is there any advice you'd have for someone like how they would get past that? So what you're saying, it sounds like what you're saying is there was conflict before the split that carries over.
Yeah, that's
There's-
essentially what creates adversarial co-parenting. Either like, especially in the beginning, if we are just not getting along, we broke up for whatever kind of reason, and there's tension there, I have to now co-parent and collaborate with this person that I have tension with, and then what if I have an idea and you have an idea? That makes it 10 times worse. So I think that our child should go here and you think that our child should go here. It's difficult to kind of work through that if I already have tension.
Okay.
People don't put that to the side always.
So is that one of the things you're saying that needs to be done, necessary to put aside whatever conflict?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I mean, that's easier said than done.
Right.
So I mean, that's why I guess I have you. So
Yeah.
Are there some kind of steps or advice you have for trying to put that aside so you can have a healthy co-parent relationship?
I wouldn't say that there are necessarily like black and white steps, but because it's a journey, it's a process. Like whoever is having difficulty like working with their, I was about to say partner, their co-parenting partner, they have to like really find out what's going on with them, right? Like, so I have to like, what's affecting me? Like, why can't I do this? Is it them? Is it me? Is it both of us? And like you have to be intentional. I have to be intentional on working on the way that I communicate, even though I'm upset about whatever happened or things of that nature. So I don't think that it's necessarily like step 1, step 2, step 3, but I think that like awareness is everything, right? Like, so it can't just be the other person. And a lot of times people want to say, well, they did this and they did this and they did this. Sometimes it's really like, well, how am I showing up in this situation too, right? Like people, I match energy. Okay, so what is that going to do, for the child at the end of the day? So I think that really like understanding what your approach and what are those things that are affecting you. Why can't you have a healthy co-parent relationship?
Okay. So do you have any advice for someone who, I guess, so that old saying, it takes two to tango, but sometimes it's one person more than the other. Well, at least we'd like to think that.
Right.
That it's more, I'm going to say it's not me. That's what I'm saying. And that's what most people will say.
Yeah.
So it's, how do you figure out who it is, who needs to change, or does someone need to change? Or, like you said, you have to get to that point of acceptance and self-awareness. So I can't go to the mother of my children and ex-wife or whatever and say, look, you need to figure it out. You need to get this self-awareness. So how do you get that other person to that point? Or
that's the tricky part about awareness, right? Like I can't force somebody to be aware.
Yeah.
I can show up how I need to show up, but awareness is very intimate to the person. So you can tell me I'm coming off this way and I could totally disagree and be like, you're crazy. Like, why would you even think that or say that? I'm perfect. Like, but really I have to come to that on my own. Like something has to be in my face to kind of say, oh no, Courtney, like you're doing this. That's the sucky part. On the outside looking in, we could see the other person like, oh my gosh, you're toxic. You're this, you're this, you're this. And the other person be like, I'm amazing. Like there's nothing wrong with me. So there's very little that the other person can do to say, you need to be aware, unless y'all have that type of relationship. You can definitely say, is something going on? What's going on? This isn't working. We need to look at blah, 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 blah. And then the person, if they trust you and, can be open and vulnerable with you, they might take it.
Well, a lot of times that's the reason y'all aren't together in the first place.
Right,
Because you
right.
don't trust it. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to figure out a way to get to that happy medium. Like, I mean, so I guess the question is, is it better to just work on yourself and hope the other person eventually gets to the point they need to be, or do you suggest pointing out, hey, look, you tripping for no reason? Or I guess you don't want to say that, because
Right.
that'd
That's
be
what
probably
it's like.
confrontational.
Approach, right? But I think that goes part of working on yourself. You then know how to approach, right? Because if we're matching energies or whatever, and I know that my child's father is going to come in and with the attitude, I'm going to brace myself for the attitude, right? Because I know based on evidence, he has attitudes. So I'm going to, well, not today. I'm going to, you know, and that's usually what we do is we get ready for the war kind of thing. But if I don't want to get into it, you know, like it's not that hard not to get into it with somebody. We prepare ourselves to get into it because our egos say, you're not about to talk to me like this. You're not about to talk to me crazy, or whatever the case may be, right? So we brace ourselves for that. So you definitely need to work on yourself so that you can say, okay, well, how am I approaching this? Probably isn't effective, or I'm not going to enter in it this way, knowing that the person is going to, especially some people want to push your buttons. They want to say, see, I knew you was just like that. But if you're working on yourself, I'm not going to give you anything to go back and tell your friends. Because you can't tell your friends, Courtney just went off if I didn't go off.
Okay. So I've tried that, and I can only go on my
Sure,
personal experiences
sure.
or experience of others who friends are in the same situation, divorced or never married, whatever. Sometimes, like you said, they want to push your buttons. Right. So I know one of the tactics I had started using, especially on text message, when she would start going into it and going off and saying, you ain't shit, and this, that, and the third, I would just always put LOL, just laughing out loud. It didn't matter.
That's bait, though.
How is that bait? It's so if I respond, which is what she wants me to do,
But you responded.
so you're saying just not say nothing.
Don't say LOL.
Okay.
Like, because so imagine I'm angry, I'm heated for whatever reason.
Okay.
And then I'm going off messages. You ain't shit. You this, blah, 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 blah. Again, you're working on yourself. So you might be like, I'm not phased, whatever. This ain't nothing. LOL. I read that. Oh, you laughing at me now? You gonna laugh at and you gonna play in my face? I knew you wasn't shit. Okay,
I didn't think about it that way. All right.
So it's like for you, you're like, this is nothing. This is child's play.
So then sometimes the silence, like let's say I just ignore, which I've done in the past. Then it just keeps coming. Like
Ignoring is essentially can be baiting as well because y'all have to communicate. Y'all have to communicate. So here's it. So it's about the approach, right? So like if you ignore me, oh, now you're gonna ignore me?
Okay, so you give me a lot of don'ts, but where are the do's? So all right, so I can't.
But it
say
depends on what.
LOL. I can't ignore. So then
It's the healthy boundaries. What I'm not gonna, and it's not the what I'm not gonna do is da 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 da. But I don't wish to have this type of discussion with you via text. If you want to talk on the phone, we can talk, on the phone, or we can talk about this. As I stated before, I don't want to get in back and forth with you because what happens is, when you set the healthy boundaries, is the person going to get mad? Yes, but I can't like do too much or go dig in on your boundaries, especially if I'm going off and you tell me, Courtney, I don't really want to argue with you at this moment. I would like to discuss this with you further. If you want to have a phone call or if you want to talk about this specific or whatever the case may be, like, yeah, I could be mad. I can have an attitude. But what kind of argument would I have to say, oh, now you want to have a healthy conversation?
yeah, I guess.
Oh, now you want to talk on the phone only about our children's soccer? You know what I'm saying? What would my rebuttal be? Yeah. I can have a rebuttal with silence. I can have a rebuttal with LOL. I can have a rebuttal with all those things. But if you set a healthy boundary, yes, the person can be mad. But, like, we're going to go back and forth about your healthy boundary?
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so it's more so like that's where the working on yourself comes in, because I'm not going to give you what you want. Silence is what you want, because now, see, he don't even text back. I try to communicate and he don't even text back. Or when I try to communicate, he laugh. He put laughing emojis. Versus, I'm going to show my friend how you communicate in a healthy way.
I got you.
You know, like, I'm not going to show my friend, like, oh, he actually trying to communicate and I don't like it because I want us to get into it. You know? So that's the working on yourself. How do you approach the conversation?
Okay. Do you also think a big part of that adversarial co-parent relationship is one person or both people might not have officially let the relationship go?
Yeah.
Because I know, and I know this is obvious that it's not healthy, but I'm wondering how unhealthy is it when you occasionally dip back in that pond, you know?
Right.
And so I know people who've done it. I know people who do it. But I mean, it's kind of hard to just let somebody go completely in some cases.
Yeah.
But is that, how detrimental is that? Are you resetting the clock every time you go back? Well, let's just be straight up. Every time y'all sleep together, after y'all have broken up, separated, divorced, decided you're not going to be, and is that harmful to the children?
It depends on the after effects if it's harmful to the children, right? Okay. So like if we've decided for whatever reason we're not going to be together, whatever the case may be, and then we say we're going to co-parent, and then we still have some type of relation, that means we're tied separately from just our children. And what if I think that it's more than the other person? So the person's like, oh yeah, let me just see you tonight, move on, go on this date tomorrow, whatever the case may be. It's not a big deal. See my kids, have dinner together, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? We might be making steps to get back together. And then we just slept together, and then I find you went on a date the next day, or you're moving on, or it's not that big of a deal to you. We're getting into it. We're gonna fight unless you both say this is nothing more than sex, nothing more. Which for many people that doesn't last long. Some people it works, sure, just generally speaking, but for most humans, there's some emotional connection that comes with sex.
Okay.
So it I don't know that it necessarily affects the children unless the fights because of what happened. That's how it would affect them. Like, not many people can just say, oh, this is what it is and move on and co-parent. No, somebody's going to get emotionally connected. 10 out of 10 wouldn't recommend. I would not recommend doing that unless you're not necessarily really broken up. You're trying to work on it. We're dating. We're trying to see what this is. Okay. Even that doesn't necessarily seem that healthy, but like, unless you're both trying to work on the relationship. But if you decided to break up, go find somebody else. Like,
I got you. Is not talking healthy? You know, like sometimes you get into an argument with someone and it's just, you know what, we're just not going to talk for a while. Is that, it's, so I say, I know people, and I myself have, me and the mother of my children have gone through those phases where we just don't talk at all, unless it's absolutely necessary. You know, a kid gets hurt or doctor visit, but outside of that, I don't need to talk to you except to let you know, yeah, I picked up the kids.
I mean, that's not bad if it works for you, especially if your kids are able to communicate. You know, like if you have older children that are able to communicate and talk to you and say, yeah, we're good, whatever, you know, because sometimes it's, if your children are younger, not talking might not work. But if you notice that, like, when we communicate, it's horrible and it sucks and I don't want to do this anymore, it might be okay to not talk. Like, that's not a bad thing. As long as when you communicate, it's like you said, pick them up, we're good. Drop them off, we're good. You know, it has to be some form of healthy when you communicate.
Okay. Trying to think of what else as far as the co-parent. I don't know when is it okay to fight? Is there a time when it's okay? Because, you know, sometimes, well, I don't know how it is with women, but with men, I know me and my friends, if sometimes we just need to hash it out. It's like, get it out, we box, we're good after that. Is that the same, or can that be a healthy expectation? Like, there are some things that have been stewing for a while.
Yeah.
We need to go ahead, fight this, come to a resolution, and keep it moving. Or is it just avoid any arguments at all costs?
It depends on how so disagreements are inevitable in any form of a relationship, because I have a way of thinking, you have a way of thinking, and that might not correlate, right? So if I think that, again, our child should go to private school, and my child's father think, no, they're good in public school, you know, whatever the case may be. Those are two varying opinions, and now we disagree. So it's inevitable, right? But I think that, like, how you do it. So there's this idea of fair fighting, right? So it's the understanding of what we're going to do and not do. So I wouldn't also recommend, like, letting things bubble up, right? Like, so if you have an idea of something, like, don't just let things stew, because now it's a buildup and I'm a burst. So if there's a disagreement, it's okay to have a disagreement, and a conversation is just, how do you do it? Right? Like, that's the important thing. So we're not going to, like, hit below the belt. We're not going to ice each other out. We're not going to, you know, do things that, you know, just insult or intentionally hurt each other. We just disagree. And then, but that takes emotional maturity, and communication skills, right? So, of course, disagreements and fighting is inevitable, but I have to be emotionally mature to say, we disagree, and I'm not going to talk about his mama. You know, like, I have to know going in, we just disagree.
Yeah. Speaking of disagreements, involving the family court, that pretty much is going to always cause a disagreement. The court says one thing. You got two parents who both want, you know, more time with the kids. Money, it becomes an issue. How do you navigate that? Or is that even something you navigate? Because that is going to cause a fight.
Yeah.
So when you get into that realm and you have to involve the court, knowing that fight is coming, there's what can you do to, I guess, before we even start talking about dealing with the kids, like, as an adult, how do you prepare for that? How do you cope afterwards? Like, you know, somebody, there's always going to be a loser, you know. Even if you do 50-50 custody, it's very seldom where both parents agree to 50-50 custody and want that. So is there some type of preparation you can do, or something to, hey, no matter what happens, I'm still okay, or I'm going to be okay?
Well, essentially, yeah, like, getting an understanding of what it actually looks like. So maybe if you just kind of go in blindly, which a lot of people don't understand what that process looks like. So we go in thinking, because we heard from somebody or we saw something on TV, this is what it's going to be. And then you're, like, extremely shocked. So now I have to recover because I had no idea walking in. So I think maybe, like, even educating yourself about possibilities, right? So when we look at possibilities, we look at, am I able to be okay with this possibility, this possibility, this possibility? So you have an idea of what they are, right? So in therapy, there's like this idea of, like, Socratic questioning. So that's essentially what therapists do. We just ask, like, a series of questioning, and we get down to the bottom of saying, like, what is the worst possible thing that could happen?
Okay. So when you say Socratic, was it Socratic?
Socratic questioning.
Questioning. Okay.
And so it's just like a series of questionings, and you process a thought, right? So it's kind of like, I have to go to court. So you're processing the thought of, I'm about to go to court. And so, boom, okay, you're going to court. When do you have to go to court? You know, it's just kind of like breaking down that whole scenario. And then you get to a space of kind of like, okay, what are these possibilities? And what are all the possibilities? And you're looking at all the possibilities. What is the worst outcome that could happen. And then you process the worst outcome that could happen, right? And then you process, well, what do I do with the worst outcome? So I'm sure, like, for a parent, the worst outcome would be like, I never get to see my children. Is that a realistic thought? Possibly. What happens if that happens, right? So it's just like that kind of gets you into the mindset, because if you think about the worst case scenario, a lot of times for many people, I'm not saying that the worst case scenario doesn't happen, but a lot of times for many people, it doesn't happen. So I've processed what the worst could be. And so I'm going in and I have like these different possibilities, and I processed what it would look like, what the worst would look like. And a lot of times it's not ever going to be that for many people. I'm not going to say that it never happens.
That's one of the reasons why I started this whole podcast, because the family court system, they're getting more and more aggressive and more lopsided as the years have gone on, just based on my research and what I've experienced personally. So sometimes that worst possibility, actually a lot of times that worst possibility does actually happen. So, and that being said, let's say you've prepared for the worst possibility, it's happened. You said you never get to see. I only get to see my children, depending on the month, 7 or 8 days out of a whole month, know. So, and then, because of the child support situation being what it is, like I can't even afford to take care of them when I have them. So I guess, how do you cope with that, or what are some good ways to try and cope with that, realizing that this is going to be reality for the next 18 years?
It's kind of coming to the realization, well, does it have to be reality for the next 18 years? I guess it would be another question too. Like if it is that what you get set in stone, like, because if it's set in stone, then I have to work through the process of like, this is reality for the next 18 years, but is it? Right? Does it have to be this way for the next 18 years? But if it does, I think a lot of times people want to not feel and not accept certain feelings because they're not accepted societally. Like, I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be sad. I shouldn't be frustrated and things of that nature because it just doesn't feel good. And people don't think that you should not be this angry. It's kind of like, no, sometimes we have to accept that this situation sucks. I don't like that judge. I don't like this person. I don't like this. And that's okay. Like, we don't have to like everybody. And like, people are like, no, it's not this. You need to feel like this. No, you can be angry at the system. And so I think that a lot of times just sit with the anger that you feel about what's happening. And it's okay, because people say, no, you shouldn't, lean on God, a lot of people will say things like that. It's like, I can do that, and I can, work with what I have to work with, but I can still be angry, and I can still be sad, and I can still be frustrated. So I think part of it is just accepting the feelings that you have about it and not necessarily trying to push it to the side, but also seeing, is this my reality for the next 18 years, or is this my reality now that I have to cope with?
So for those parents who are, attempting to accept that reality, that it's not what they want, how do they keep from projecting that or allowing that to get in? Because, like I said, a lot of the fights start because that person's unhappy for whatever situation. Depression, things like, for example, mothers who the father is nowhere to be found, or not supporting, or not being supportive, or not helping, and they feel like they're always doing it by themselves and never going to have any help. That's their reality, right? And so when you talk about the worst possible realities, I think for mothers, that is the worst possible, one of the worst possible realities, that they're getting no help, no support. So how are they supposed to keep going day to day? Because it's one thing to accept it, but it's another thing to live with it.
Right,
so.
Right. But that's where like support and, your network, your community, therapy, all that, because situations cannot change, right? Some situations can change. But if your child is 16 and for 16 years the child's father hasn't been in their child's life, kind of like, okay, I've been doing this for 16 years, 2 more years, my child, it would, and then they get the choice on if they want to be with their father or whatever the case may be. But part of it is accepting this is my reality, but who do you have supporting you, right? Like, who is in your community? Who is there so that you can vent? Who is there that you can just say whatever you want to say to and they not judge you or try to give you unsolicited advice, or if I was you, I would do that. Like, who do you have in your corner to where if you are having a hard week, you can lean on that person and depend on that person or that community or that network of people that you have. Because I think support is really important so that you don't feel like you're on this island on your own.
Okay. That's good advice. I don't even know how to get to that place. Well, and that's what you said. I guess, some of it is at some point maybe you do have to go to therapy and get over it. Now you said being angry, being upset is okay. Is hiding it okay?
What do you mean by hiding it?
Well, especially from your kids. Like, a lot of times they don't even understand what dad is going through, what mom is going through, and you don't necessarily want to tell them, because then you start getting into that, oh, your daddy ain't
right,
your mama is your mama is this, and so kids are going to be kids, but then having to deal with that. For example, I guess so I can be more specific. Give you an example. There are a lot of times I don't have the funds to do things. And my kids want to go here to Chuck E. Cheese, go do this, go to the road. The Houston Rodeo was just here. I don't have money for that. And so, and then you get into that, well, mom does. Like, we do this at mom's, or we got this for Christmas. And how does it, and I think coping with, I'll be honest with you, that's tough.
Okay.
Like, my daughter's birthday is coming up. I don't know how I'm going to get her a present because I've got to pay this. I've got to, pay the light bill, do that.
Right.
So I'm not going to have the lights turned off so I can get her a present, know, but at the same time, her mother can afford to get her multiple presents. Well, I can't even afford to get one.
Okay.
So, and that's what I mean, hiding it. It's like, well, hey, and then kids
so hiding it from the children.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or from others, or just period. Just trying to, what's the saying? Fake it till you make it. So.
I don't necessarily think that it should be hidden from others, especially from people who you consider your support system.
Okay.
So if I have a friend and my friend is just like struggling by herself and didn't say any, I'm gonna be mad. 'Cause I'm be like, girl, like, what are you doing? Like, you've been going through all of this and I care for you and I love you and you're not telling me nothing. Like, you're not even allowing me to be a support system, so that you don't have to project onto your children. Because it's like, when we think about, like, it's like holding in or blowing up a balloon. It's like you keep blowing it, it's going to burst and you're not going to win. So if you holding it in, hiding it, and doing all the things, and then your daughter comes, is like, my birthday coming, and mama says she get me 3 gifts. You done blew that balloon up so much. I don't care what your mama get, and you don't want to do that, but we're human. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't say hide it from anything. I think that there's ways that you can kind of express that and go through that and process that with your, community. So that way you don't feel the need to, like, act a certain way with your children, or whatever the case may be. I've been able to vent and talk about this or get support I need from community and family and friends, or whatever the case may be, to where I can communicate certain things with my children, or they won't even know because my best friend might buy my daughter a gift, or might make it look like we're good. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't suggest hiding it in general, but I do understand not communicating certain things to your children, right? Like, so I get that.
Okay. And I guess second to last.
Okay.
Moving on and dating afterwards. And that's a whole.
I would say that's something in itself.
Yeah. So, but I guess at what point is it okay? Either side. I mean, and as far emotionally, psychologically, mentally, how do you know when you're prepared to get back out there? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's intimate to the person.
Okay.
Right. So somebody relationship might end, and a few months later they're like dating, but that might be good for them. Whereas somebody, it might take them a little bit longer. I think that once you get into a place of understanding both sides of how the relationship ended, right? Because again, we'll look at what everything the other person did. They did this, they said this, they did this, blah, 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 solely on the other person. But we don't necessarily look at, well, how did I approach the relationship, one, and what are those things that I did, but what did I learn from this relationship? What do I take away from this relationship? What do I not want in the future, or how do I not want to approach things in the future? So I think it's just the understanding all around about that previous relationship, because some people would just end, solely blame the other person, and then go into another relationship and bring all that into the other relationship, and then they essentially turn into a walking red flag, not even knowing that they did some things in the relationship as well. They're only blaming it on the other person. So I think that it's really getting a full understanding of the previous relationship.
Yeah, and I guess to go further into that, to be a little more specific, as far as how do you keep from projecting? So, I mean, because you got to remember, you've got kids involved as well. That other person might have, well, this day and age, a lot of, and depending on what age you are, the other person you start dating most likely going to have children, or a lot of times does have children. So projecting that, hey, I'm having this trouble. Okay, I'll say this. If you have if you are still in an adversarial co-parenting relationship, can you have a healthy relationship with someone else?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think that the communication that you have with that other person, so the person shouldn't walk in not knowing what the relationship is with your children's mother, right?
Or it could be with the father.
Or the father. Yeah. Either way. But like it shouldn't be like a shot, like I need to know what's going on. How does that relationship work? Oh, you're having difficulty? What is the difficulty? Things of that nature. Because a lot of times the other person might have an issue with the new person. Yeah. And so for the new person, they need to know, like, okay, what is the issue that y'all are having, so that, I can prepare myself, things of that nature. But you can definitely have a healthy relationship with somebody and not necessarily have the best co-parenting relationship. I think it's just the communication that you have with your new partner.
Okay. All right. Well, that being said, because I could ask a million other more questions about that, and I want to have many more conversations with you. But the next one I want to specifically have is, we talked about what it looks like for ourselves as adults, our healing, what we need to get in a good place, interacting with each other, trying to fix that co-parent relationship. But I think the biggest thing is, and just based on my experience, you can't really work on the relationship with the kids if you still have a poor relationship with yourself and in a bad place for yourself. But the most important thing, because the ones that have the most to lose in this are the children who are caught in the middle of this. Right. And so I want our next conversation to be, how's that interaction between me and the kids, between there and the kids. You gave me some help, because I do the LOL thing all the time. Yeah. Because I think I'm not gonna actually respond. I'm not gonna say F you back or this. It's just, all right, LOL, and I go on with my day. Yeah. So I thank you for that. That's helping. I know a lot of people who have that issue, and I didn't even look at it from that perspective. Yeah. But now that relationship between me and the kids, what am I telling them? What am I explaining to them? That's what I want to talk more about later. Okay.
That's a big one, because they're still involved.
Yes.
It's not just, it's the co-parenting relationship, but it's co-parenting for the children.
Yeah.
And they're a big factor.
Okay. Well, thank you again
No
for
problem.
doing this episode. And I guess to the viewers, hopefully one of the biggest takeaways you got from this is work on yourself.
Yeah.
Mental health is important. And to be honest, before we can even talk about the system and what it does or doesn't do, or how it fails us, or how it creates these situations, or just how society is, we have to take responsibility for our own actions.
Yeah.
And being held accountable for ourselves and our mental health is extremely important.
Absolutely.
So thank you again, Miss
Thank you for
Ledette.
having me. This was great.
And we'll see you next time to talk more about how the kids are affected.
Thank you.
I want to take this time to thank you for watching episode 2 of the Held Accountable podcast. And I know this is the part where they say you're supposed to ask the viewers to like or subscribe to your channel, but I could care less about that. What I'm more concerned about is if you did learn some valuable information, then to share this video with 2 other co-parents. The reason being is that while the family court system is flawed, it is broken, in some ways so are we. And having that emotional awareness is essential to being a better co-parent. So if you live in the state of Texas and would like a chance to make a positive investment in your mental health, consider visiting thegreencouchcounseling.com/contact us and use the promo code accountable365 to get discounts on therapeutic services. And I'll close out by reminding you that before we can point the finger at the system and say that they're failing to act in the best interest of our children, we need to take a look in the mirror and ask ourselves if we are acting in the best interest of our children. Because one day we all will be held accountable.
Order in the court.